So, welcome back, and we're on to now part 2 of our Sheffield memories. And I said last time, didn't I, that there was something of a conflict within the church. One of the things that I've always tried to stress wherever I've been is the whole issue of prayer. It's such a vital part. That hasn't always been successful in encouraging people to pray, but it really did take off in Sheffield. And one of the reasons for that was that I was contacted by a South Korean Methodist minister, Reverend Joshua Paul, and he said, can I come to your church and talk about the wonderful revival that's happened and is happening in South Korea? And of course we welcomed him, invited him. And so it was an open meeting, people from other churches there too. And he was really inspiring us about what God had done in that country. And he talked particularly about early morning prayer meetings. Just about every church in South Korea has an early morning prayer meeting. So people would come along every morning, pray, and then they'd go off to work. And so at the end of the time with us, he said, why don't you start an early morning prayer meeting? And so that's what we did. The following morning we started. So for 3 or more years, probably.
4.5, I think.
4.5. Well, it was a long time while we were there. The majority of our time, we had an early morning prayer meeting from 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock each morning. People would come, not only from our church, but from other churches too. There was never vast numbers, but there were always people there. And those were, I think, a foundation of our time in Sheffield.
And even I managed to get up every
Sue,
morning, didn't
who's
I?
not a morning person, came along every morning.
I said to God, I'll try, but you've really got to help here. And he did. I've since found out that, or knew already, but had it confirmed that bad habits are much easier to get into than good ones. But it was an amazing time, wasn't it?
And another thing that really inspired and encouraged me in my prayer walk and in relationship within the city was that I was invited along to the church leaders' early prayer gatherings, which met every week in one of our local churches. So there was I, little old me, alongside these great men and women of God who were leading sometimes very big churches in Sheffield. And it's fantastic to be part of that. We had training days, we had prayer times. I learnt so much and benefited so much from being part of that regular church leaders prayer group. And we also started prayer gatherings in Wesley Hall, which it's got a really good venue for that kind of gathering. And I really got to know and love a man called Alan Whiteley, who was an Anglican minister in the city. Alan and I worked really closely together on prayer, and particularly when there was a big citywide mission in Sheffield with Louis Palau, who was an evangelist. He came and I was asked to head up the prayer for that mission. So we had 24/7 prayer, we had people praying round the clock, we had prayer gatherings, and when the actual mission took place every night in the Sheffield Arena, we were down in this big room under floor, or under the ground level, and in that was the prayer room. That was the heart of the mission, really. We were praying away for what God was doing up there in the main hall. So prayer was such a fundamental part of our time in Sheffield, as I've tried to make it elsewhere too. Now, can you talk a bit about CBS, how that came about?
Yeah. Well, initially they approached you, didn't they? But I'd been involved in this thing called Bible Study Fellowship when we were in Bristol, which I think is a really good way of studying the Bible. And I'd thought, if we had something like that here, that would be really good, and I could just go along each week and learn. But it ended up with myself and a friend called Sarah starting this CBS group at Wesley Hall with friends from a few other places. I think there was maybe half a dozen or 10 of us to start with. And we got the thing going, I guess, and then Sarah wasn't able to continue, and I ended up holding the fort with that. And it just grew. The idea was that you study the Bible as community, not as individual churches. And it was enormous fun. And we saw our group grow to about 60 or 50 or 60 by the time I left.
That's still going.
And it's, yeah, I mean, there are still groups in Sheffield that came out of that small group that we started 20 years ago now.
And the Wesley Hall in Crooks was there were lots of people of all ages. We had a good children's work, youth work. There was lots of young adults. We married a number of couples there, didn't we?
We did.
Rachel and Mark. Hi, Rachel and Mark, if you're watching. Jonathan and Sarah. I'm married. They're not at Wesley Hall. Jonathan's now, well, they're both, Jonathan and Sarah, a church Salvation Army officers. So it's great how things develop. We've probably talked about enough for this session on Sheffield. So lots and lots of things going on. God is at work. Prayer is happening. I'm getting involved in the city-wide stuff as well. So it was a wonderful time, but it was quite traumatic when we had to leave Sheffield, wasn't it? We'll probably talk about that next time. So that's enough for today. So thank you so much for watching. God bless you, and hopefully see you tomorrow.